If you are interested in learning tools and techniques that will help you identify the early stages of burnout or help you recover from burnout if it's already taken hold, then this is the episode for you. I've got an incredible guest. I have a nervous system regulation coach who's joined me today, who is going to share her tips and expertise around how to spot the early signs of burnout and how to implement wellness habits and techniques in your own life that will help lower your cortisol levels and help you reset your nervous system. So if that sounds like it's going to be of value to you, then keep on watching, and I'd love to introduce you to today's incredible guest. Hey everyone, and welcome to another episode of Transform Your Career Success. Today we've got an amazing interview for you with Hazel Cotton. Hazel is a nervous system regulation coach specialising in helping people recover from chronic conditions like burnout and long COVID. And we've got a fantastic topic today. But let me start by introducing you to Hazel. Hazel, thank you so much for being on the show. I'm really excited to have you here with me today.
Thank you, Susie. I'm so happy to be here.
Let's dive straight in. Let's start with finding out a little bit more about you and your business, who you help and why you help them and how.
So as you mentioned, I'm a nervous system regulation coach, and I help lots of people recover from chronic conditions. Now that could be a variety of chronic conditions like chronic fatigue, fibromyalgia, long COVID, and also burnout, because they all derive from a very similar place. And a lot of people have had it for many, many years. So it's really rewarding to be able to help people to suddenly realize they can actually get better and see them recover.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So we've got an amazing topic to cover today, haven't we? So we're going to talk all around burnout, how to prevent it, how to recover from it. And you're going to share your expertise all around nervous system regulation. So it's going to be so helpful to so many people, not just in corporate careers, but I would say entrepreneurs as well, because burnout is something that particularly high achievers and high performers face into. So having the tools in your toolbox to spot the signs, recover from it early and prevent it in the first place is just so helpful. Amazing. So let's dive in then. So where shall we start? Do you want to start off with your background and your story? What led you to starting this business and why are you so passionate about it? I think that's a good place to start.
Yeah, no, certainly. So my background is in the corporate world. I was in the corporate world for 20 years, and I've worked for a number of different big consultancies and clients throughout my 20-year period. And I worked predominantly in procurement for quite a few years, and then I moved into management consultancy. And as you know, working in those industries, it's really stressful. It's really hard work. There's a lot of pressure, and a lot of people are just really struggling to kind of maintain their health and just also perform at the same time. So all the time when I was working at these big organizations for quite a large period of that, I was actually struggling with the health myself. Back in 2008, I was actually diagnosed with fibromyalgia. And that derived from a shoulder injury from carrying a laptop, believe it or not, for one of my corporate jobs. And so I literally was carrying this laptop for, a year or so. It was hurting a little bit, but not particularly. I didn't really think too much about it until suddenly the pain got really, really bad. And I went to see a physio, and they were like, well, your shoulder is hanging down 2 inches lower than your left shoulder. I was like, oh, okay. So that's when the pain started, and it was localized in my shoulder. And then gradually it spread throughout my body. And I went to see, various different types of people. I had so many tests, so many therapies, etc., but none of them really worked. And then I went to see a rheumatologist, and he diagnosed me with fibromyalgia, which is essentially chronic pain, no cure, no solution, no nothing. It literally felt like a death sentence. I was in my late 20s, and this is what I had to look forward to. And that basically dominated my life for quite a long period. There's lots of things I couldn't do, like going to festivals and doing exercise because I was in so much pain. And then I moved to New York in my mid-30s through work, which was a great opportunity. And I was told about this guy who could fix lots of people. And I went to see him, and he was actually able, over a period of months, to resolve a lot of my chronic pain, because my muscles had become underactivated or overactivated. So he was able to reactivate them. And that's when I started doing a lot of Pilates and strength building to really make my body really strong. Moved back to the UK, and then found that I still had the shoulder pain that I originated from in the first place. Went to see a shoulder surgeon, which is really what I could have been advised in the first place. And he was like, yeah, you've got an impingement, little surgery, fine. Had the surgery, which went well, but then a week later, my whole body crashed completely. And what I know now is that my nervous system has essentially just crashed. And I was extremely ill. I basically got chronic fatigue, which meant I was struggling to do lots of things to begin with, like showering. And then I developed a lot of really severe eating allergies, lots of things I couldn't eat, and was off work for a number of months. Luckily, I was with an organization that did paid sick leave, which is we shouldn't be a luxury, but not all companies offer it. And it's so important for people's health and wellness and just their mental state to know that they can actually recover without worrying about money. And I went back to work, and, I didn't have any brain fog. I just had a lot of physical fatigue. So I was able to work, but my social life was impacted quite a lot. Gradually kind of got better, spent a lot of money on a lot of alternative therapies. I did actually go and have lots of tests with the traditional medical world, but they were like, there's nothing wrong with you. And that is what anybody with a chronic condition will experience, is they could be having so many different kinds of symptoms, but but the medical world's like, we don't know what's wrong with you. That's it. So then I was kind of getting a lot better, but I knew that there was something underlying. Then I got COVID in the end of 2020, and I literally crashed right back down again. And it was worse this time. I had more symptoms. I had a lot of brain fog. I found it really difficult to work. I had a lot of other neurological symptoms, back to not being able to do anything again. I lost my life again. And I just started a new company. And so joining a new company with being ill, it was in lockdown, whole combination of things. They did not offer paid sick leave. So yeah, I was there for a few years, and gradually kind of was getting better using the same approach as before, the same kind of treatments and therapies, but still there was still a barrier. I wasn't getting completely better. But then I discovered about nervous system regulation, and that's what changed my life and the way that I approached my illness and my condition. And I always wonder, why did it take me so long to find it? Because once you know about it, it seems so obvious. But, partly it's because the traditional medical world don't acknowledge it. And you go onto any of the chronic illness websites, and they will all say, we don't know what's causing it. There's no cure. There's no solution. They might offer you CBT or prescription drugs, but nothing else. And also because it's relatively new in terms of a buzzword or a concept. I mean, it's not a buzzword, but in terms of being around in the public domain. And it just didn't exist as a thing a few years ago. But, now it does. It's gaining more prominence. And that's what I want to share with people today is around understanding how the nervous system impacts your health. And I became so passionate about it, and became so disillusioned with my role and purpose in the corporate world that I then left, and I set up my new business, which was Rebound with Hazel, which is helping other people to, find out about what's going on with themselves and then how they can heal themselves as well.
Amazing. Well, thank you for sharing that. With something like fibromyalgia, do you think that medically it's just classed as one. My son's got IBS, and it's the same kind of issue in that from a medical perspective, it's more like an umbrella term and there's no cure for it. And then because they don't really know what to do with it, they don't, apart from looking at your own health and wellness, we felt very like lost on what direction to take with him because it was such an umbrella term, and without having so many invasive tests on how to where to pinpoint the actual issue. So I mean, it's really great that you found a way through it, isn't it? And
IBS,
I'm sure
so IBS is another one of those umbrella terms, as you mentioned, that falls under nervous system regulation. And we'll come on, I know we're going to discuss in a little while about how is this the case, but yeah, IBS for sure is one of those as well.
Yeah, so I'm excited to hear about this, because just to see if there's anything I can do differently. I mean, my son's quite stable with this condition now, but it's taken a lot of trial and error to get to this point, and I'm always looking for things that will reduce the number of flare-ups that he has. So I'm really excited. I think this is going to help so many people, those with chronic conditions, those with long COVID, and like you say at the start, those that are encountering burnout, just having those tools to be able to self-help is going to be so powerful, in addition to whatever's out there medically. Amazing. Okay, thank you for sharing your background. I think that's so important to hear your journey and your story. So it sounds like you've got such a heartfelt why behind this business, and leaping the corporate ladder to start this business, and now you're on your entrepreneurial journey. I mean, it's so exciting. I can't wait to see where you take this, Hazel. So where shall we start then? So in terms of the signs, should we start at the beginning? So what are the kind of signs to look out for when it comes to particularly burnout?
Yeah, and it's worth understanding exactly what people mean by burnout, because it's a term that's used a lot, but it's kind of used quite generally. And actually, it's been categorized by the World Health Organization as an occupational phenomenon. And it's just defined as a chronic workplace stress that hasn't been successfully managed. And it's basically a combination of emotional, physical, and mental exhaustion where people feel like they're unable to cope. And obviously there's varying degrees of that. And what we want to do is be able to make people aware that if they're starting to feel some of the symptoms, that they can get in there quickly before it escalates. And it particularly can impact women, because women are juggling so many things. They've got the childcare, they've got their work, they've got so many things they're juggling and holding down. And with all of the stresses that the world has right now, so many people are kind of feeling like they're on the edge. And there's a number of different symptoms, and they generally can be categorized into physical, emotional, and behavioral. So physical could be things like either insomnia, so you just can't sleep, or maybe you've had a full night's sleep and you still wake up and you're absolutely exhausted. So it's fatigue, it's exhaustion, it's headaches, it could be digestive issues, it could be pain like muscle or joint pain, noise sensitivity, high blood pressure, lots of little things, frequent infections, cold sores. You know, are you getting a lot of colds? Are you getting a lot of infections? Is your immune system kind of compromised? So lots of rashes, like lots of small little things that you can't quite put your finger on. And then emotionally, this is becoming maybe overwhelmed at small things, either crying or anger. You're becoming very frustrated. You may be becoming dependent on alcohol or drugs. You kind of are less enthusiastic about life. You may be feeling very anxious. So kind of emotionally related symptoms. And then behaviorally, it's kind of feeling disconnected and detached, either from your work, from your partner, from your children, from your friends. You're kind of isolating yourself. You may be becoming a little more apathetic about life. Maybe you're procrastinating. Maybe you're having difficulty concentrating. Lots of kind of small things that could be impacting the way you're feeling about yourself and the way you're kind of feeling about your environment as well.
Yeah, the emotional side is what really jumps out at me, you know, being like really in a very sensitive space. A lot of those symptoms I've definitely encountered over the years. And I'd like to think that I'm getting better at identifying them and nipping that burnout in the bud, but actually I'm not sure. I think it creeps up on you, doesn't it? It's incredibly subtle.
Yes.
And then all of a sudden it hits you like a ton of bricks, and then you're in that burnout state and it's really hard to recover from.
And I think that is exactly it. It really does creep up on you. And that's what we want to talk about today, is some of those little warning signs. And if you do see them, then taking action sooner rather than later, and not just thinking, oh, it doesn't matter. Oh, it's just this, it's just a headache, or it's just whatever. You know, you really do need to prioritize yourself, because if you don't, there is the risk that you could end up, you know, crashing at some point when a trigger happens. You know, with me, it was, you know, having COVID, and also it was having the surgery, but it could be like a vaccine, it could be a car crash, it could be particular work stress, it could be just something that tips you over the edge. And that's what you want to definitely avoid, because then it's really your body is saying, hold on a second, I tried telling you that something was wrong for all of these years and you didn't listen, but now I'm going to make you listen. And I think that one of the most important things to realize around your nervous system and around all of these symptoms is that all of our symptoms are kind of messages to us that something isn't quite right. And that's what we need to be listening to. It's something that can be a bit difficult to get your head around, because you're thinking, well, how is that the case? Because of the physical symptoms, it's got nothing to do with my nervous system, my brain, all of that stuff. But actually, it really is. It is related to symptoms and messages that are coming from our nervous system.
So in terms of, I mean, they're all really great tips on how to spot the signs of burnout. What would you say if you do identify it then, and you think you're resonating with some of those symptoms, what steps could you take to prevent it from actually turning into burnout and to become unwell with it?
Yeah, well, there's a number of things you can do. And there's the kind of more obvious or practical steps you can take, like working on your boundaries, learning to say no to people, saying no to your boss, saying no to your friends if you feel like you're at capacity and you can't take any more, making sure you're taking breaks, making sure you're delegated, making sure you're speaking to your manager and your organization about your situation so they can support you. But that's not what I'm going to be focusing on today, because you can find that advice in lots of places. I want to talk to you a bit more about how you can work with your nervous system. But I think it's worth just talking about how the nervous system is working and why it's so important here. So it plays a pivotal role in how we manage stress. And it's derived of two main components. So you've got the central nervous system, which is the brain and the spinal cord, and then you've got the autonomic nervous system. And the autonomic nervous system is comprised of the parasympathetic nervous system, the sympathetic nervous system, and the enteric nervous system. And maybe you've heard of some of those things, because they are talked about a little bit more these days. But essentially, they are responsible for how we basically act. And the sympathetic nervous system is known as our fight or flight. And that's really important for helping to protect us from danger. So it could be that we're being chased by a bear, probably not in the UK, but chased by something. Or it could be that we see a car coming and we jump out of the way. Or any kind of shock, or falling off our bike even. You know, it's like, hold on, danger, danger. And it increases our heart rate, it puts us on alert, it maybe gives us some pain to say, okay, this is something you need to be looking out for. And that's the role of the sympathetic. And then you've got the parasympathetic, which is the opposite, which is basically our rest and digest. And that takes us back into the calm mode. So it helps we slow our breathing down, we slow our heart rate down, and it takes us into that chill environment. And in a normal, regularly healthy person, these two parts, they kind of ebb and flow, and they go up and they go down. There's protection, there's safety, you know, up and down, up and down. And that's really, really helpful. And that keeps us safe. But sometimes if we've been in a situation where we've had prolonged stress, then this can become a little bit more imbalanced. And sometimes we can get stuck in sympathetic mode. And if we get stuck there for too long, there's a lot more going on with this. There's the vagus nerve is involved as well, because, you know, the vagus nerve is the component that derives which sympathetic nervous system is going to come on. Is it going to be the sympathetic or the parasympathetic nervous system? So we've got the vagus nerve governing everything. And then we've got these two nervous systems that are kind of, you know, ebbing and flowing. And if we have been in stress for too long, then that's when things can start to go a little bit haywire, basically. And that is where the signals to the brain start to get confused. And when we encounter like normal day-to-day things, like just sitting or just walking or going into a restaurant or doing just normal things, our sympathetic nervous system is actually thinking that there's danger when there isn't danger. And that's when it gives messages to the brain to be like, hold on, there's danger, there's danger. So that's basically what kind of happens when people have become dysregulated after being in stressful situations for a long period of time. And that is where our symptoms come, because the autonomic nervous system interacts with every organ, process, function in our body. And that's why the symptoms are so wide ranging, and why it can often baffle doctors, because a lot of doctors, they kind of only work on their particular area. And because this is widespread, they're a bit like, don't know what's going on here. We don't know what's causing it. And so they kind of, you know, distance themselves from it. But actually, if we understand what's going on with the messages, with the external environment and what's happening internally, then we can start to understand that we as individuals can influence our own health. We can influence the messages that are going to our brain to then keep us in a regulated state. So it's not that we're trying to make ourselves calm all the time, because sometimes people say, I just want my nervous system to be calm. That isn't what we want. We want it to be adaptable. So it goes from parasympathetic and sympathetic and vice versa. And that's what we're aiming for. And that is why taking then steps to learn how to regulate your nervous system is really key in managing any symptoms that you're getting in relation to burnout or other chronic conditions.
Wow, it's absolutely fascinating.
It's mind-blowing once you...
It is mind-blowing.
It is. And I'm still flummoxed as to how I didn't know about it for so long, but most people don't know about it. You'll find now, if you Google it, you'll find a lot of information, but it's not necessarily in the public domain. And once you start looking into nervous system regulation, brain retraining, neuroplasticity, neural pathways, you will find your mind will be blown as well. And if you can get your head around the fact that this is a thing and not just purely physical, as in it's derived from inside of us, you have all the opportunity to fully recover from whatever symptoms that you've got.
I bet a lot of people listening to this all resonate with a lot of what you've said in different ways. So like you mentioned earlier on about CBT and anxiety, I guess, is a response of one of those nervous systems.
Yes.
So anxiety, so it's not just burnout, is it? It's the anxiety, it's panic disorder, it could be anything, the fatigue.
Anything. I mean, I'm going to say this very generally, but if you have got symptoms and you've been to the doctor and you've had all the tests that you could possibly have and they've all come back negative, the likelihood is that there is an issue with your autonomic nervous system. It's likely, because I mean, you definitely want to rule out that it could be something else. Like if you've got a load of headaches, you want to check it's not anything too serious. Or if you do have some digestive issues, you want to get that checked out with fatigue. But if everything's coming back negative and your doctor's like, I don't know, then yeah, definitely worth investigating this area.
So interesting. It's fascinating, and it's an area that I know, the medical side is something that I know so little about. Wow. Okay. Ooh, let's carry on. So in terms of, so we've talked about spotting the signs of it. So what kind of steps could someone take to, if you've identified that potentially you're resonating with a lot of what you said and potentially there is a nervous system imbalance or regulation needed, what kind of steps could someone take to help regulate their nervous system?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I think the one thing that to acknowledge, first of all, is that most people who have got a dysregulated nervous system are relatively disconnected from their bodies. And one of the main goals with nervous system regulation is reconnecting in with your body. And I know that might sound like a foreign language to some people, like, what on earth is she talking about? But most people who are dysregulated are stuck in their heads. They're very analytical. They're probably perfectionists. They're just really thinking all the time. They are not used to listening to their body. And so some of the things that I'm going to suggest to you, you just need to have an open mind, embrace it, and not just be like, that sounds like nonsense. Because honestly, there are so many people have recovered from really just focusing in on what's going on inside of them. And you might say, okay, this sounds a bit boring, but if it sounds boring, it's probably what you need to do. So I would say just stick with it. So the first thing you can do is really just connect in with nature. So, you know, you can go into the garden, to the forest, to a park, and just be there and focus in on the things that are around you. Get rid of the phone, which will be your temptation to be like looking at it, and just look at, you know, the leaves or the petals and the bark, and just really just observe it. Because even doing something tiny like that is you are stopping thinking with your head. You are now thinking, you're sensing with your body, you're sensing your environment, and you can look at the textures, the smells, the colors, and just do it for a few minutes, and you'll be surprised how difficult it is. And that's what you want to be building up to, is being able to just be and not do. So that's one thing, is around your environment and really just sort of taking note of your environment. And something else you can do is also just checking in with your body. So we can look at things like our breath. So if we're breathing, how are we breathing? You might think, well, we breathe all the time, we don't need to think about that. But actually, the oxygen we intake catalyzes all of the functions in our body, all of our brain activity. So if we're breathing in a very shallow or fast way, we're not optimizing the amount of oxygen we can get into our body. So first of all, how am I breathing? Fast, slow, deep, etc. How am I sitting? What's my posture like? Am I tense? Am I clenched? Very often in the corporate world, we spend all of our time like this, and our muscles are tense. And so that, again, is sending messages that are not helpful for us. We can check in on our thoughts. Are our thoughts negative, positive, neutral? How are our emotions? Are we feeling happy or sad? And as I mentioned earlier, like the brain is getting messages, the vagus nerve and the brain are getting messages from our external, how we are. So if we are kind of breathing really fast and really tense, what does that mean? It means, oh, we're in danger. So we must switch into the sympathetic, stressed mode. But actually, if we're just sitting like this, we're like signaling to our brain that we're safe. So we're in the parasympathetic mode. So actually, the way that we are just being is communicating into our bodies, and that is determined like how we kind of are. So it's, even though it might sound quite small, it's actually really, really, really important, because most people who are dysregulated will find that they are probably quite tense and probably breathing really fast, and that's how they can definitely help to recover and start to regulate things. And if you check in with yourself several times a day or hour, depending on where you're at, you'll notice that you can start to reset the messaging that's going on. So that's kind of something else that you can try. Mentioned about breathing. There's lots of different breathwork approaches you can take. One of them is box breathing. So you're basically breathing in for 4, and then you're holding for 4, and then you're exhaling for 4. And if you do that a few times, you're then starting to regulate your nervous system as well. But there's lots of different breathing techniques you can try. And I've mentioned a couple of times about the vagus nerve, which is so key since it governs whether we are stressed or relaxed. And it's a muscle, basically. So it's like a muscle. So you can train it by doing vagal toning exercises. So there's quite a few of those you can try as well. But one of them you can do, it involves literally looking up to the right-hand corner. And then after that, you would look up to the left-hand corner. So you keep your head still. And if I'm going to look up, and you would hold that there for around 30 seconds or so. And at some point, you will start to yawn or sigh or something. And that's showing that you've activated your parasympathetic nervous system. And then you can do it up, you do it both sides. And then you can do that a few times. And what you'll find is that it will literally, probably you'll start yawning, especially if you're dysregulated. And if you do this over time, you're basically building up your resilience to stress. It's so powerful. And you can do it when you're actually feeling fine, because you're then building it up for when you're not fine. But when you're not fine, it really can help to just bring you back down into that parasympathetic state. So really important, vagal toning exercises. And then finally, something else you can try is somatic movements. And if you don't know what somatic means, it basically means of the body. So it's thinking about your body and the sensations. So there's lots of different movements you can try, and they generally are focusing in on one part of the body. And what somatic movements do is they release stress, tension, and trauma from the body. It's really quite amazing. Like if you are practiced at it and you're doing specific ones, especially with the hips, you'll get so much shaking. You'll get emotion coming out. It releases years worth of trauma and tension and stress. And the way that you're doing it is you're doing the exercises very slowly. And again, this is the opposite of the way most of the corporate world is working, which is fast, fast, fast. We go to the gym, we have to hit this, we have to do this, hit exercises. This is the absolute opposite. If you're finding you are doing a lot of like that hectic workout stuff and you're feeling kind of a little bit below par, I would recommend either replacing or complementing with some somatic movements. And there's one you can try, which is if you're just laying on your back with your knees in the air, and you just take a few deep breaths and you just kind of really relax in and ground yourself. And then gradually move like one knee out 1 centimeter, and you just relax again. And you want to make sure that you're relaxing your breath, you're relaxing your stomach, you're relaxing your jaw, you're relaxing your tongue, because what you'll probably find is you're holding on to one of those things. And then once you've relaxed everything, you can move it another centimeter. And you might find that there is some resistance, and that's fine. You can just either sit with that resistance, or you can go back to where you were, or you can keep gradually moving down 1 centimeter. And what you'll find is, this is where the shaking comes in, and this is where the release comes in. And over time, as you become more practiced, you can just release so much out of, because our hips hold so much of our emotion. So just lying on your back and slowly moving your leg out, your knee out, and then doing it on the other side as well can be really, really powerful. And what you're doing, the main goal, one is there's no goal, but the main goal is literally just focusing on your internal sensations, not about when's this going to finish, what am I expecting to get out of it, what's this, the analytical side. It's like, what am I feeling? Are you feeling any tingles? Are you feeling things relaxing? Are you feeling any heavy weight? You know, what are you feeling? So all the things I've suggested all relate back to your body, getting into your body, telling your body it's safe, telling your nervous system it's safe, so that it can chill out and stop keeping us on this kind of knife edge and stressed pinnacle that it's been sort of on the edge of for so long. So yeah, that's kind of my few recommendations. I know it's a bit of a whistle-stop tour there, but wanted to share a few things.
Thank you. No, they're incredible tips, and they're really accessible as well. So you don't need any equipment. It's something that you can do at home or in the office if you can find a quiet spot out of the way if you're feeling super stressed. I think they're great tips and advice. And how...
I think that's the main thing you just mentioned there, is you don't need an equipment and you can do them at home. And the whole, I guess, central point around this nervous system regulation is you are in control of your health. Normally, we're used to spending so much money on going to this therapist, this treatment, this. People who've got chronic conditions will have spent thousands on acupuncturists and therapy and all these things. It's not to say that all of those things can be useful and helpful in some regard, but actually, if you can take back ownership, do this at home for free, once you know how to do it effectively, then yeah, that's really, really powerful as well.
Amazing. Thank you, Hazel. Are there any particular times of day when you say it's more effective, or would you do it just when you feel your body needs it, or do you think morning or evening? What would you recommend?
I think it depends on how you work. It can be really good to do some visualizations in the morning and some breathing exercises in the morning to kind of just get you set up for the day. I do the somatic exercises in the evening if I'm going to be doing them. Also, it allows you that freedom to really properly relax, especially if there is any emotion to come out. With the sort of checking in with yourself and the vagal toning, I would recommend you could do that sort of in the day, sort of just keeping you in check throughout the day. If you are feeling very dysregulated, if you've got a lot of symptoms, you can always put a timer on as well, to remind you to let me check in with myself. How am I sensing? How am I feeling? And whilst you've got that timer on, you can just be, okay, I'm just going to spend literally like 2 minutes doing some deep breathing exercises. So you can scatter it in amongst your day, and it isn't really like time consuming. You don't have to do everything every day. You can work it around your schedule, but just sort of little bits every day, because it's around smaller consistency. It's about gradually training your brain that everything is okay. So you just keep on doing those things that it likes on a regular basis.
That was going to be my next question, whether you'd recommend it every day. So it sounds like yes, every day if you can, for consistency. Incredible. And I imagine a lot of these things be really great for reducing cortisol level and stress in your body overall as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, this is completely related to cortisol, because stress releases cortisol, and adrenaline. So all of these exercises and techniques, they will be reducing your cortisol. So yeah, that's a primary benefit from doing them.
Amazing. Oh, thank you so much. You've given some great tips. I've written them all down, so I think they're going to be really. I think for anyone listening, whether you've got a chronic condition or whether you're a high performer struggling with a little bit of stress or high stress, teetering on the edge of burnout, all of these tips are going to be super, super helpful. I've made a note of them. I'm going to see if I can encourage my 13-year-old to do some of them. We'll see.
Good luck.
You know it's going to be a no from him, don't you? Just like, oh, but I do see a lot of benefit. I mean, for me personally, I'm going to try. I've done the box breathing before and I found it super, super helpful. But I think the point that you said around consistency, I tend to only remember to do these things. Like I've got a Shakti mat and I can think that the laying on your back with the knees in the air is probably going to be really great for me when I'm on the Shakti mat. So I might try that later. And maybe before bed at night so that you're super relaxed. It'll promote a deeper sleep. Yeah, amazing.
And actually, I have a guide which I'm going to leave with your viewers, which has got a load of vagal toning exercises in that people can download for free. So that hopefully people will find that helpful as well.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Hazel. We'll make sure that we share a link to that. And for everybody watching or listening, we'll make sure that we share in the show notes a link to Hazel's social media and any other links that you want to share, Hazel, including that you just mentioned, because that sounds really, really beneficial to everyone. Well, thank you so much. You've given so much value on this episode. It's been absolutely fascinating. I've learned so much. I mean, like I say, it was an area that I didn't really know a great deal about, but I feel really a lot more informed now and a lot more equipped with the tips and techniques that you've given. So thank you so much. I think they're going to really help anyone listening or watching this.
Oh, amazing. Thank you, Susie. It's been so great to come on and share everything.
Thank you for sharing your journey, your expertise, and anyone who's interested in connecting with Hazel, I'll make sure I include all of the links. So thank you all for watching. I hope you've enjoyed this episode and we'll see you on the next one.